นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมัสสามิ Blessings, good evening to you all. It's very nice to be back at Bodhipala Monastery on the edge of Adelaide here, and to see you all willing to give up your time to practice even though the weather is cold, midwinter, and to see the progress of the monastery, Ajahn Kalyano, the Sangha, and everybody is doing a good job looking after the place. Our teacher Ajahn Chah used to say, if you look after your practice, then you're not only looking after yourself, but you're looking after the Buddhist religion and the Buddhist teachings. You're helping to preserve them in the world through your practice. So that's one of the merits or the greater benefits that come from our practice. Sometimes Buddhists can get a little bit caught up in their own practice, and we practice meditation and get frustrated with our mind that is not doing what we want, maybe full of thinking, stress, worries. We see different attachments and maybe feel disappointed. But if you see the wider picture, then you can also maybe appreciate that your efforts that you make in the practice are benefiting others as well as yourself. And your effort is almost as important as result. Of course, we all want to find peace and happiness in our life, but that effort we make towards that end is something we have in common with each other, and we support each other through our efforts in the practice. And a monastery is a place we do that. It's a place where we can practice in the best environment available. It just depends where that monastery may be. No environment is perfect because there's always some distractions or limitations in every place. But a monastery is a place you set up for practice on every level, whether it's teaching and listening to talks, meditating, practicing mindfulness in daily life, volunteering, helping, practicing kindness and compassion. It's a place where all these different qualities can be nurtured and developed by many different people, both ordained people and laity. So it's something good to remember when you come to practice, whether it's dana or sila or meditation. You're not only helping yourself, you're helping and supporting others in their practice. So you're making double the merit, double the goodness by both helping yourself and helping others. And we affect each other in this world. We don't live isolated from others, even though often we become obsessed with our own thoughts and states of mind, our own life and what's going on. We affect each other whether we realize it or not. So the good that we're doing is also in subtle ways or sometimes in very direct ways, is helping other people. that really begins even, when you have a baby in a mother's womb, whether it's the words of the Buddha or modern science. Now people are more and more aware of the state of mind of that baby and the mental development of the baby, the environmental impact on a baby, even in the womb of a mother, is very important. So what the mother is doing and her state of mind, how she's living, is going to affect the baby from day one. And that's not day one. Is not birth. It's the already conception and being in the womb of the mother. So sometimes when mothers are pregnant, they come for a blessing, and we remind them, try to practice mindfulness and be restrained and develop loving kindness for yourself, for your baby during the pregnancy, because your baby is already picking up on its environment as its body and brain and mind are forming in the womb. And so what we say and do affects our baby. Of course, once the baby's born, even more so. Baby is new to the world, so we have to nourish a human baby nurture it with love and care and educate it, look after it. So how, particularly the parents, but also other people as well, how we behave and practice and do things around that baby is going to be very formative, very important for its whole life, especially those early formative years where it's absorbing everything we say and do. It's learning. The baby's brain is growing very quickly, so it's learning many things. So then we might think, well, what do we want to do for our baby? What kind of things do we want our baby to learn? So as a parent, it must be a great sense of responsibility, because you've got your words, your mood, how you conduct yourself is going to affect your baby in your family. Partly this reflects the fact that humans are special. Every human being born in the world is special because we have this potential to learn from people, so particularly our parents. They're our first teachers. So in Buddhism we call them our first arahants, first enlightened teachers, because they're giving us all that love, care and attention from day one. But also there's this important fact that human beings, we can learn, and that separates us from animals, say, where they never really go beyond instincts. Animals act according to their instincts, and they're very sharp, so they know when there's danger, so they'll run or avoid danger in one way, or they'll fight it. They know where to get food, and they'll be looking for food. And they're always working on the instinctual level because they don't really think. But human beings have the power to think, reason, learn. But that can be both something good, and also it can be a pain. It can be a boon or it can be a pain, because we often trip up over our own thinking, think too much, get confused by our thoughts. And that starts at an early age. What we're giving to our babies and children around us in the world is very important, because they're picking up views, opinions, ways of thinking, language, concepts and ideas. So it's both very special that human beings can learn, and they can learn the very best, can't they? We can do the very best for each other, for the world, and even get to an enlightenment. That's been proven over and over again since the time of the Buddha, that human beings can develop themselves right to the point where they're totally free from stress, suffering. They truly understand the nature of the world and how to end their own suffering. But human beings can also learn wrongly, and they learn things that are not so good for them. We have this problem as well. We have to learn to choose wisely in life, to direct our minds. And so for the young, that is very important for adults and those around them to help them, give them the right start, the right information. As we become adults, well, we make our own choices and we can sift through all the things available in this world, the information, the practices, the cultural practices, the knowledge, everything that's available to us as human beings. We have to start sifting through it once we're adults and determining what's really to our advantage, what's harmful. So in Buddhism we call this developing right view, and that, the Buddha pointed out, comes from two main sources. One is from spending time with people who practice, learn to live in a good way, develop the kind of qualities that are conducive to happiness. So various virtues such as kindness, compassion, faith, patience, mindfulness, and so on. And we get that from the people around us, so teachers, parents, people who provide us with teachings and good example. But then we also have to develop right view through our own internal mechanism of developing wisdom and wise reflection. What the Buddha called yoniso manasikara means skillful thinking or wise thinking. That's something we have to begin to learn, maybe almost from day one in the world. Learning the different kinds of consequences, different results from our actions, and why one action leads to suffering, one action leads to benefit, happiness. Even from a young age, we start teaching that, showing kids how that affects them. Our actions have consequences. Our actions are important. Good actions will bring us towards more happiness, more benefit for ourselves and others. Unskillful actions will bring us more suffering, confusion, stress, and maybe harm others as well. So learning that is a big part of our, what we call Dhamma practice, both associating with good people, Kalyana Mitta, and then learning to reflect on our behavior and understand cause and result. This is the way the Buddha said right view develops in our life and helps to nurture the best in our minds, our human mind. So a monastery is a place where we learn these things by listening to the Dhamma, reminding ourselves of the Dhamma, practicing mindfulness, sharing our experience. The monastery is a place where you come together and you meet other people who also have faith in the Buddha and his teachings, and you can share some of your experiences, support each other, help to encourage each other in good things. And as we practice, part of our practice is looking after the physical place. So we come, we make offerings, we volunteer time, effort, skills, knowledge. But then we also practice on the level of, say, learning chanting, learning the teachings, listening to the teachings, meditating. All of that we can support each other as we do it. And we're preserving Buddhism for ourselves, for the future in our lives, and also for future generations. So So every time a new monastery, Buddhist monastery or hermitage or place of practice arises in the world, whether it's here in this part of the world, in some other part of the world, it's a little bit more light coming into the world. It's giving another opportunity for people to practice. So it's a very special kind of thing. And a monastery comes together from so many different sources, doesn't it? There's the physical land that the monastery is built on, has to be offered, given to the Sangha. There's buildings that get built, they're offered as well. And then the facilities, the books, say, now everything's online, but we still have books. So you have chanting books, you have the suttas, the Tripitaka, the Buddhist texts and scriptures. All of this, we are preserving Buddhism in this way by supporting a monastery and then practicing in the monastery. That's how we've got to be here in this monastery, say at this time, we're able to come and practice here because it's being preserved up until this point. Buddhism has been preserved in the world. We just chanted some chants that have been around for 2,500 years. So one generation chants. These chants may use the Pali language, and if you're new to Buddhism, you might find that you're unsure what the words mean. But if you keep chanting, reading, learning, well, quite often people do gradually get to understand the translation, and it has more resonance in their mind as they chant. But most of these chants have been around since either the time of the Buddha or not long after. So even just by chanting regularly, keeping the teachings of the Buddha alive, the concepts and ideas, and obviously benefiting them, we hope, through the practice, but also you're helping to preserve them for the future, just as people before us have preserved them so that we can make use of them. Or in a monastery you have a Buddhist statue, and people who are new to Buddhism often they come in and they sort of, why does everyone bow to the statue? They're not sure why, maybe. A statue is a focal point, isn't it? And it represents the Buddha, and it represents the qualities that the Buddha represents. The statue can be made of metal or stone or timber or other products. Or it could be a picture, painted picture of the Buddha. So it's a physical thing, but it represents a lot more, doesn't it? It represents all these qualities that we aspire to through the practice. Compassion, wisdom, the purity of mind, the mind that's let go of greed, anger and delusion. And the pure knowing, the awareness that the Buddha stands for. The word Buddha means the awakened one, the one who knows. So every time you bow to a Buddha, what you're really doing is establishing that same quality of knowing in your mind at that time. And then physically you bow, you're humbling yourself to these higher qualities, meaning you're saying, these are what I aspire to, these are what I value. So it's an act of showing the worth, the respect, the value of the things that you are bowing to. And it also physically, it slows you down, brings you mindfulness when you bow, doesn't it? You have to pause to physically bow, whether you just put your hands together for a few moments in Anjali, the Y, the Anjali, or you physically prostrate. You pause, establish mindfulness. And that helps us in our practice, and that's a big part of our practice, is finding ways to bring up mindfulness over and over again through our day. So even a simple bow can bring up these very important qualities. You're inclining towards the Buddha, his teachings. You're inclining towards enlightened knowledge and the quality of knowing. You're softening your physical stance, and you're softening your mental stance. The sort of mind that might just reject everything. some of the more stubborn qualities we have, our pride, our conceit, we're sort of lowering them so that the mind can maybe accept a little bit more of the Dhamma. So even as something as simple as bowing to a Buddha statue, can be an important part of your practice, and maybe even inspire other people when they see, and brings up a certain perception in the mind, doesn't it? When you see someone bowing, you might not want to bow yourself, but you can see, well, it's a fairly harmless action. It's non-aggressive. It's the very opposite of aggression. And it tends to be sort of something that's graceful, gentle, and it may bring up both qualities in the mind of the one who bows and also one watching. So something as simple as bowing or reciting some verses of Pali in the chanting, something as simple as that is preserving the Buddha's teachings for ourselves, for others. And sometimes you see that when you fall back on these things, when your mind is in confusion and stress or fear and worry, something as simple as chanting, bowing to the Buddha, can steady your mind, calm you down. It has a very therapeutic effect. Brings up mindfulness, but it also brings up these wholesome qualities that may help you deal with a stressful situation. Monks learn this when we stay in quiet places, in the forest on our own, or even if we're other people, but in the forest or in cemeteries, charnel grounds, lonely places, you have very little in terms of protection. You have your monk's bowl and your robes, you're camping. And if you see monks in those places, sometimes you notice, they might, before they sit down and meditate, they bow. Or before they do walking meditation back and forth, they bow, raise their hands in Anjali to the Buddha. They're not in a monastery, there's no statue, there's no paraphernalia. They're just doing it because they're inclining their mind towards the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and these virtuous qualities in their heart. And it makes them mindful of what they're doing. So even in a lonely forest, you might see someone quietly bowing. It's not they're bowing to the tree or to the rock that's next to them. They're bowing to the goodness of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the goodness in their own heart, seeking to bring their own heart closer to the truth. And that's another quality that unites us all. We're all seeking truth. And a Buddhist monastery is a place which helps support that. The Buddha pointed out it's the truth that ultimately liberates us from suffering. And when we can see the harm of clinging on to wrong views, unskillful states of mind, and we're willing to let them go, then the truth arises. We see, if I hold on to my greed, my anger, delusion, I suffer. And much of the time we're not seeing that, so we continue to suffer, sometimes in small ways, sometimes in bigger ways. But as you become more mindful and you see the harm of clinging on to angry thoughts, fears, worries, or the reactions to different situations we get in, you cling to your angry reaction, your fear, your worry. The more you practice, the more you see the suffering that comes from that, the more you're willing to let go. And then you trust more in the process of letting go as well, the process of liberation that the Buddha pointed to. One of our problems, one of the reasons we suffer is we're not yet willing to let go. We have so much energy invested in our habits of thinking, emotional reactions to things, attaching to physical things, attaching to people, and the ideas we have about those things, those people, ourselves. this all covers over the truth, doesn't it? The more you follow habits of mind, the more your mind goes to sleep. Even if you're fully awake, it's asleep in the sense it will be caught into its reactions and daydreams. And one who's meditating, practicing mindfulness, sees that more and more. You don't just see the moments where you have clarity, peace, your mind is bright, but you also notice the mind when it's not clear, not peaceful, lost its mindfulness. You start noticing those moments as well. And you realize that a lot of our day we're walking around on autopilot, where we're just doing an action out of habit. We've learned how to do that action. And it can be quite complicated things. So driving a car, or typing at a computer, or interacting with other human beings, we have to make decisions, we have to do all kinds of complicated tasks, activities. But so much of the time we're just doing it without being fully mindful, fully aware. And that's why often we end up stressed and suffering, because if you're not fully aware, well, you start to cling, to attach, and then sooner or later you run into trouble, don't you? You start to get frustrated when the thing you're trying to do, you're not successful, or you don't get what you want. When unpleasant experiences come your way, you're not ready for them, so they sort of wake you up, and suddenly you find you're angry or scared or worried. And particularly people are saying, these days, the days of COVID and lockdowns and changes in our lifestyle that come in very quickly sometimes and unexpectedly, people are seeing that more and more, the frustrations of suddenly being woken up to a new experience of working from home or lockdown, and your arrangements, travel or plans are all disturbed, or can't go and see someone you wanted to see, whatever. And that's happening quite a lot these days. So people are constantly being woken up, their plans and their desires are getting interrupted. So there's a lot of stress from that. But maybe if you stop, pause a bit, you can see maybe there's some good in it, even though it can be painful as well. But the good in it is like this waking up, interrupting your own mental habits and the thinking mind, which takes over so much. And if we're not fully aware, the thinking mind causes us all kinds of problems, doesn't it? It causes us, we create stress out of everything. We overthink and we worry and we complain and we judge and we think and think and think. So sometimes people come and they say, oh, actually maybe it's better being an animal, just working on instinct. You don't have to think about everything, you just go, food. When you're afraid, you run. When you need food, you go towards your food and get your food, and you don't think too much. I don't think that's quite correct, because being an animal, there's a lot of suffering, more suffering than humans. But the idea is, people, we realize sometimes our thoughts are our worst enemy when we're not mindful and we're not training ourselves. So you come into a monastery, often that's highlighted, isn't it? You start to see your thoughts more clearly. It's a quiet place, not too many distractions. Maybe you're meditating or just doing some task, trying to be mindful, doing some activity, and you see your thoughts and you realize how much of your thoughts trick you and cause you to react with aversion, worries, or attach with greed to things and want more of them and want to hold on to them. And this is going on all the time, but so much of the time we miss it, we don't see it. But then as you start to practice mindfulness, and especially in a suitable environment, well, you see things, don't you? You notice these things. And hopefully that gives you the inspiration to practice more. And this is what the Buddha was getting at. He's encouraging us to be more mindful, more aware, so we can catch our thinking and understand it better. Those thoughts that are useful, we keep, and that's good. We have to use our thoughts as well. It's not just get rid of all thought. This wasn't what the Buddha was teaching. He said, use thought, develop the ability to skillfully reflect on our experience. But some thoughts, we need to abandon, need to get rid of them, give them up, stop holding on to them because they're causing us suffering. So we're here to develop this kind of quality of knowing, awareness, so that we can see what's going on in our mind and discard the causes of suffering when they arise, and to develop the thoughts and mental activities that will help create and support the arising of understanding and virtuous qualities like caring, compassion, mindfulness, wise reflection. Ajahn Chah used to say, meditation is sometimes just like a parent looking after their kid, because a child needs different inputs at different times. You don't just have one default mode. You're always disciplining them, or you're always spoiling them. Or it's not one or the other, is it? Life isn't as simple as that. You have to also be a little bit flexible and adapt to what the situation requires. So it depends on the child and their particular problems or sufferings, or maybe things are going very well for them. But we have to be flexible and adjust our response to the child and see what it needs. And so he'd say, sometimes you need to be firm with the child, sometimes you need to relax, let it be. Sometimes you need to really love it and spoil it because it's suffering a lot, perhaps. And our mind is just the same. There's not one way of doing this practice, whether it is just meditation or just generally our own sort of well-being in daily life. There's different factors that are important. We have to start observing, developing this mindfulness and awareness, and observe what does our mind need. And sometimes it needs more of the caring, nurturing side. Sometimes it needs more of the discipline side, firmness. Sometimes it needs better information, and we have to seek out the teachings and remind ourselves of teachings. It will need different things at different times, and that's part of the skill of the meditator and one following the Buddhist path. You're learning to use your mind to help your own mind. Because in the end we have to teach ourselves. We draw the teachings from the teachers and from the Buddha in, but then we have to apply them, and we have to learn how to do that. So the Buddha used to say, make yourself a refuge to yourself. You have to learn how to teach yourself and learn for yourself, having received the teachings and gained good examples and teachings from others. Then we have to bring them inside. And so sometimes, we have to be tough on ourselves if that's what's needed. So sometimes we set ourselves goals and make rules for ourselves when we see we have a weakness, and we say, I need to, we use the precepts for that, 5 precepts, 8 precepts. When you practice Buddhism in the beginning, you might go to a monastery and they say, now we're going to undertake the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts, and there's a little ceremony and you do it, and that's a good start. But really, then you have to develop the intention to keep precepts, especially if you see there's an area you need them. Some people are a bit careless and will kill little creatures that come anywhere near them, out of fear or displeasure. They kill bugs and flies and mosquitoes, or even bigger things like mice or rats or whatever, snakes. So if you see that's your weakness, then you have to adhere to that precept more, and you say, I'm going to really do this. Whatever happens, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to harm other beings. And so then that opens up other avenues of behavior where you can't kill, so you have to see what you can do to solve this problem of being bothered by bugs or mice or something. But if that's what you need, then you have to reflect and try and use the practice to help you. And say, I'm going to be firm in this, I'm not going to kill. Or if you're one, you talk a lot and you end up sometimes saying things you regret, telling lies, or saying things that hurt other people, and you start to notice that, then maybe you introduce the precept to be careful of your speech, not to lie, not to abuse other people, insult others, whatever, and you start adhering to it. It's not easy because sometimes the intention comes up quite quickly and you're not fully aware, but you keep returning to that intention, not to lie, not to speak disparagingly or insult others, and you just keep coming back to that intention until it becomes more clear to you and more normal for you. So we use precepts sometimes to develop discipline, but then at other times maybe we have a lot of anger towards ourselves, towards others, and we need to do things to calm ourselves down, soothe ourselves. Partly that's just the words we use with ourselves, as we're thinking. Use words that calm yourself down, remind yourself to let go of the negativity or accept your faults, your weaknesses. Use soothing speech with yourself, develop an acceptance of yourself if you find you've got a lot of anger, or maybe it's other people as well, so you have to turn the goodwill, the compassion towards others and develop more sensitivity to others. So all of this is using the mind, what we call skillful reflection in the practice, depending on what's needed, to be firmer, to be softer, gentler, tough, disciplined. Different things are needed at different times. But wise reflection is using that ability to look back at yourself with mindfulness and then reflect, what's happening here, what's coming up in my mind, what do I need to do about this, what can I do about this? Also understanding that you can change. We can improve ourselves, we learn. This is the point of the practice. Buddhists sometimes become very depressed and just say it's all fate, destiny, there's nothing I can do. I'm full of anger, or I'm depressed, sad, or I'm worried. But it's not actually fixed. There may be many challenges in your life, but you can use the teachings more and more to understand yourself and then start to address some of those challenges. Nothing is destined to always be a certain way. It's not inevitable, it's not fixed. And that's one of the best things about the practice is, we always have this chance to learn. And particularly when we practice mindfulness and develop wise reflection on our experience, we can learn, and we can learn very well. And that's where we are different from the animals. We can do this well if we put our minds to it. We can also develop the very highest wisdom, which is the most liberating, isn't it? Coming to see that this body and the mind and the contents of our mind are impermanent, changing, conditioned things. Ultimately, they're not a fixed self. It's always going to be there, or never changing. It's got to be like that. That's more of like a view that there's a soul that's sort of always the same, moving from life to life, journeying through samsara, unchanging. The highest kind of wisdom is seeing the changing nature of the mental activity we have itself, seeing one thing is causing another. So developing mindfulness can be a cause for more mindfulness, can be a cause for wisdom, insight to arise, see where an attachment is causing suffering and letting go, for example. We're seeing this process, one thing leading to another. So both suffering has its causes, one thing leads to another, craving, attachment, suffering, but also the unraveling of attachment, the letting go of attachment, letting go of craving can lead to peace and the ending of suffering as well. So the more effort we put into our practice, the more used to we get to watching our mind and learning how to help it, how to look after it, just like looking after a kid. We can help this mind, and like a child who grows into an adult, you get to the point more and more in your practice where certain qualities are established much more than before. So then there's this sense the practice gets easier. If you practiced a lot of mindfulness over many years, say, or periods of time, then it gets easier. Letting go of attachment gets easier the more you do it. Seeing craving as a cause of suffering and letting it go gets easier the more you do it. In the beginning, of course, it seems hard. Oh, my mind doesn't want to listen to me. It won't fall into place. It won't follow the breath. I keep having angry thoughts or worries. In the beginning it's like that. But if you're willing to keep putting effort into the practice, keep doing it, keep recollecting, bringing your mind back to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, practicing meditation, practicing generosity, take an interest in the precepts, keeping them. Little by little, these things become more normal for you, easier, more natural, and the practice gets easier. When it's easier, it's more enjoyable, isn't it? You're not struggling so much with your own mind because you've learnt more about how to look after it. Maybe you know the benefits of the practice, so you're willing to do it. It's difficult in the beginning because you haven't seen the full benefit yet, so there's doubt and there's maybe hesitancy to commit to practice because you don't know yet how good it can be and how much happiness it can bring. But sometimes in the beginning you just rely on your faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and that faith keeps you going until you start to have your own results. You see the happiness that comes from the peaceful mind. And it can. And most people keep practicing, they'll have periods where they can have great joy, rapture arise, and they've got some understanding and let go of some problem that was really bothering them. They finally let go of it and seen the happiness of that. And most people, if they keep practicing, will experience that, and then they have less and less doubts, and they're more interested to keep practicing. So tonight I'd just like to express my appreciation for all your efforts, the Sangha and laity in the practice. It's a very good thing you're doing, even though it's not an easy thing, it's challenging. So be patient, keep going, and I'll finish there just giving my anumodana to you all in the practice.